Thank you so much, everyone. I hope you found that a positive experience.
It was, yeah, absolutely.
I'm exhausted.
Very well.
Cheers, Paul. You've got your
We're just bringing some more people in at the moment who were part of the audience, so that we can. This could be complete and utter chaos. So apologies if it is. So I'll just reiterate my personal thank yous to everyone who was on the panel then, because I thought that was some really insightful content that we can use, both in terms of, obviously Katie's here in the studio with me, in terms of Katie's project, but in terms of some of the work that Jane Grattan from BCC is doing around influencing government policy, and just really emphasising the role that employers and educational institutions have in terms of that collaboration. I think is so important, and I think we've got some of that content today. I'm just seeing who has joined us.
James and Mike.
Let's see.
Shula's gone, but she's gone.
There's 20 people on, but fewer cameras off. That's absolutely fine. So hi to everyone who's just joined us.
Hello.
I hope you found that useful. If anyone would like to say anything, maybe just introduce themselves and
Hi.
I'll try and moderate the discussion. Probably fail to do so, but I'll try.
Hello. May I speak?
Of course, please.
Jim Graves.
Hi, Jim.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, you'll be able to see me now, which is even worse. Okay. Interesting, very interesting. I've been dealing with development of young people for the last 30 years. Very interesting, but we don't have it joined up at all. We don't have anything joined up between education and employers. And what I mean by that is that one of the people actually mentioned careers fairs. I agree with you entirely. Careers fairs are where people come in, take all the diaries, take all the pens and then bugger off and leave everything. One of the key things I'm trying to do, and I'm working particularly with the maritime industry, because the maritime industry in Merseyside brings in £4 billion a year to Merseyside. I'm talking now, and I've got a lot of people to do a lot of work for. One of the things we're doing is we're trying to attract, and the word is attract, people to say, have a look at all the different career pathways within the industry. And that's the clue, is one of the career industry pathways. On top of that is, how do I get into those career pathways? And I've got a system that will help you with that. But I mean, and it's working for me. I look at the return on expectations as well, not just the return on the investment. We're a charity, we've got the Queen's Award, we've got all sorts of awards for what we do. But the key thing is no one gets paid in our charity at all. So we don't, when we invest, we have to get money to invest in it. But the key thing we're looking at, particularly with young people, is the return on an expectation. So we continuously measure what is happening and how we're doing it. And we listen to the young people. And it's the young people that help me to design what we're doing now and moving forward. It's not Jim Graves doing it. It's not about Jim Graves. It's about what the young people need and what the businesses need and how we can match the pair of them together to move on. And one of the key things I found... Sorry, I'm enough.
Sorry to cut across you. Just very quick, is that a specific school engagement piece, is it? Is that with school?
It's an engagement across the 6 footers, actually.
Great. Okay. Well, what I suggest we do on that point then, offline, if you'd just like to send through your contact details, and we'll pass them on to Katie, so she can have a conversation with you about how some of your work can be integrated into the talent pipeline work. I think you're absolutely right about maritime sector, and I know Rachel and Shula from Hugh Bird are on the call, and they've got a particular focus on it at the moment. But one of the things that has certainly emerged over some of the sector employer forums that we've done is about this idea of, we sometimes fall into the trap of expecting maritime or digital to be, an homogenous sector, and of course it isn't. There's a huge multitude of different opportunities, and it's how we make sure that we can properly articulate what that breadth of opportunities are. Rachel or Shula, do you just want to touch upon that from a college perspective? Because I think it's worth just highlighting.
Go on, Shula, I've said enough.
Yeah, I mean, we've been working very closely with maritime partners for a number of years now. We've had a huge amount of support in us being able to sort of gather a lot of knowledge and intelligence about what is required. I suppose the key difficulty we've had as an institution is that there hasn't been a curriculum out there. And so we soon realised that we have to be at the forefront, we have to be the trailblazers and write that curriculum. And so that's been quite a big task to do, and we can't do that alone. So we've had to select the right partners to help us do that. And Liverpool John Moores are one of the obvious partners. We just need to ensure, though, that our employers in all sectors just understand some of the hurdles that we have to overstep in education and in writing course content, and that they stay with us for the long game, really. And we have started to address that process quite succinctly through some consultation workshops. We've already looked at this with construction, and I know some of your speakers have helped us very generously with that, Jill and Sean. We're also now looking at digital. And so, CGI have been really helpful in that. But it's about having that, Rachel talks about this a lot, that real meaningful dialogue, not just sort of paying lip service, but actually, getting stuck in, getting your hands dirty and really helping us unpick what is in our curriculum and what needs to be added in. So it's that very meaningful partnership that we need to make sure we have across all of the key sectors.
Yeah. Thanks, Sheila. Katie, anything to add on that?
No, I absolutely 100% agree with what's been said there. And in terms of looking at sectors and getting the young people to understand what those sectors are about and finding out from the young people the best way to do that, that's part of what we need to do in building this school, business, college network, really, because what we've got to do is listen to the young people as well and find out what it is that they need. So I absolutely couldn't agree more.
I know there's been something put on the chat. I'm really sorry, but I can't see what it is. So if there's a question in that chat, if someone wants to ask it, please feel free. Otherwise, I'll move on. I just saw it flash up.
Yeah, it was me. My name's Paula Harding. Apologies for not having a camera on. I wasn't expecting to be able to join in. I am an executive assistant, and executive assistants manage the key players in business. And if we're better, then obviously they will be better. But professional support staff are often unrecognised in business. And I think that's a key part of a profession that is missing recognition. If we can inspire the younger generation to take up a career as a professional support staff, then they are the people who are ultimately going to make businesses more successful going forwards. So I'm setting up a group for professional support staff to collaborate with businesses in Merseyside. And I just wanted to say that I would love to be part of the conversation going forwards.
Paula, you'd be most welcome to do so, I'm sure. Does anyone Lindsay, you think you want to come back?
Yeah, I've just responded to Paula. Being an ex-personal assistant in a previous life and an exec assistant, I've worked with some very senior people, so I do know how critical that role is to their success. So I'm more than happy. She's on my LinkedIn if she wants to link in with me. But I do feel, that talent management for professional services staff, even in universities, it is lacking as seen as a career. So, happy to help Paula wherever I can on that one.
Great news. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Paula. Mike, I think you had your hand up.
Oh yeah, thanks very much, Paul. I don't know whether you'd seen it or not. Yeah, I think several people on the call probably know me anyway, but for those who don't, I'm Mike Riley. I'm the interim Pro Vice Chancellor for Engineering Technology at Liverpool John Moores. I think today's conversation really was very stimulating and really illustrates the challenge that we've all been working towards. And lots of bits of the conversation, several of us have had in lots of other forums. So I think that one of the things that it brings home to me is a point that Jim made actually, which is that the aspiration, I think, is very clear. We all share that. What we need to really, really work on to make something tangible move from it is the structural mechanisms to get those connections actually delivering on something. And some of the work that Joe Yates and I are doing at the moment around our civic engagement strategy at the university draw into this people and skills section very, very strongly. And I spoke to Rachel just last week. Was it just last week? I think Rachel, wasn't it? About the concept of escalator projects, where we've actually got a really quite well-defined value chain. and we all know where we sit in the value chain, and we somehow make that work as a continuum with lots of players in it, rather than as a sort of granular, fragmented set of different activities. And so I think bringing everybody together in a forum like this today, and the other forum that we're speaking in, is really crucial to leveraging mechanisms for perhaps how we can structurally create those mechanisms. So anything that we can do, obviously, as a university, to input into any of these discussions, please just let us know.
Sorry, Paul, I just had one to add to that. I've actually worked under Mike in the Faculty of Engineering and Technology, and know some of the amazing work that faculty's done, you know, for students and employability and the placements team there. So I think it is, I echo what he says, it'd be nice if everybody's at the table, whether that's, you know, high schools, further education colleges, universities, so our young people of the city get more of a joined up approach, regardless of what discipline they're doing, you know, so they know a way forward for themselves, which goes back to what we spoke about before about silos and demystification of employability. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd agree with that as well. I think you know, the discussions taking place at the moment around things like, you know, skills improvement plans and such, you know, are almost in danger of falling into this is about FE, and it shouldn't be just about FE. It should be about, as I said at the start, it's about schools, HE, FE, lifelong learning. It's all part of a continuum, isn't it? You can't crack everything in one go necessarily, but you've got to keep you know, appraised of the fact that each one is equally as important as the next. I'm conscious Janet had her hand up.
Jill as well, hand up.
Oh, hi, my name's Janet Jones. I just want to say really interesting discussion, and just to reiterate what's just been mentioned there, actually, there's a lot of conversation about, I think everybody's clearly realised that we're not as joined up as we perhaps should be. And there's a lot of talk about, you know, making sure that the schools and the colleges and the businesses are all working together. But I just want to kind of like put a word in for the independent training providers as well. You know, please make sure that we are involved in that as well. I mean, Rachel Hennigan, very inspirational earlier, Rachel, and you were talking about what the businesses want. And one of the things you talked about was that they don't necessarily want people to go to college and be there for 12 months. They want us to go to the businesses and do short, sharp 12-week modules. Well, as an independent training provider, that's what we do. So yeah, just it all sounds great, but please keep us in the loop as well.
Sorry, Paul, can I just come up?
Yeah, of course.
And Jill, I feel like I'm jumping the queue. Apologies. I was going to give my view. I think you're right. I think, you know, for example, sometimes we think about FE colleges not being able to do that, and where it really works well, you know, there's some, which we've talked about what we want to improve. I think we also need to recognise the stuff that's really working well now, and actually in particular sectors, be that independent training providers or FE colleges, are doing the do for their employers. I think a reason, and I'm being honest, a reason as to why it's not that joined up, there is a competitive aspect. And I personally, as a principal of a further education college, would quite like us to get rid of that. It does need to be more collaborative. And I sometimes think that comes from a place of, you know, I was going to say young, naive principle. I'll have to get rid of young, but a naive principle thinking, let's not compete, let's work together, because what if we don't collaborate when we're having these conversations as a definite, all we're going to do is irritate business. That's the way I see it, because if I'm having to have the conversation with Sean and then you're popping in, Janet, and then someone else is popping in, Sean's going to be up to there, and so as a consequence there is a need to collaborate. And I think if we truly understand the skills needs and we understand the opportunities in this amazing place that we live, there's more than enough fruit at the table for all organisations to be able to develop the skills needs in our younger and older people. So yeah, I'm a competitive person when I've had a gin and tonic and I'm watching the football. Definitely not a competitive person when I think about, in reality, why we are here. And we are here for one sole reason. I've said it a number of times. It's to make sure that whoever comes to us, comes to you, comes to any other organisation, leaves with a better set of skills that means they're going to go into the workplace and get the job. But what I did like, Janet, is the fact that you said I was inspirational. I'm writing that down.
Absolutely, yeah, you can
28, 21 is the first time, so thank you.
Yeah, no,
we're all trying to achieve the same thing in the end, aren't we?
Janet, it's a really good point, and you know, I think I made reference to training providers within the conversation during the event itself. The Chamber used to be an independent training provider. We fully understand both the advantages and the challenges being a training provider, particularly in the current climate. So you're absolutely right. It's essential that you know, I think it's something like 85 providers in Liverpool alone. So it's a hugely important community. The likes of Merseyside, Greater Merseyside Learner Provider Federation is really important in this space as well, to make sure that we find appropriate solutions for ultimately the business base that are using those services. Jill, I'm conscious you were very polite. Apologies.
It goes back to what Mike was saying, but also back through Rachel and Janet as well. So we've, over the past 3-4 years now, we've got, I know this is outside of area, but we work incredibly closely with the University of Salford, the Built Environment Department, and what we've been able to do there is kind of turn the tables a bit. So they come to us to say, oh, we're really struggling to get this module across or to make it relevant, and then we will go away and go, right, how can we help you deliver that differently and help you come up with resources? It's not just, oh, I'll send someone along to kind of talk to you about it. It's how can we get resources to really explain it in a different way, maybe that we capture it with podcast videos or GoPro, so they're actually seeing it themselves, or get them in groups onto site. But it's the same all the way through. So we've done it with even primary schools. When I think there was a campaign a while ago for Liverpool Counts, and we went and related it back to the construction industry about how you would measure up a room to work out the volume of it, but using different construction measuring tools. So you kind of introducing the industry to them really early on. And I think training providers as well, Janet, so we've done that where they might have been struggling to deliver the CSCS, and there were certain modules that they couldn't get across. So we were able to go, right, we will look at it from a different point of view than what the trainer would, maybe in practice. So I just think we need to work. Yes, we've all said we need to work differently, don't we? But sometimes it's going back to the industry to say, we can help you train, even though you're the experts at it.
Yeah, absolutely, Jill. I think as well, you know, there's obviously certain organisations with scale and scope to have, you know, resources to provide at scale to schools, colleges, universities. The SME base maybe have different options available to them to offer, whether that's placements or whether that's just time, or, you know, some of the opportunities emerging from COVID around digital provision. You know, there's the chance to create resources that way and you know, integrate into schools. And some of the conversations we had with Rachel and the businesses who were part of that digital roundtable was about how can you start setting sort of practical and simulated activity. And I think one of the participants in that said about they will not take on interviews now unless a candidate can demonstrate some sort of portfolio from their educational experience that is relevant for the job that they're going for. So again, that demand from employers, I think, is really interesting. Sean, can I come to you in a second on that? Is that all right? I think I apologize. There's one hand up, and I was told who it was 5 minutes ago. James, sorry, James.
Hello, thank you. A really interesting discussion from everyone today. So just to introduce myself, I work on the University of Liverpool's Go Higher diploma, which is a 1 day a week foundation course for 1 year that's designed to offer people without traditional qualifications an entry route back into higher education. And one point that was raised by Lindsay earlier was that sense of people in employment often reaching a point where they feel that their skills then need to be consolidated with a degree behind that. And that's sort of the main body of students who we come across, people who have either reached a point in their career where they feel they've progressed so far, but to get to the next rung, they're asked to have a degree and would have to sort of go back to the beginning to start again. Or people who then want to change direction and need to have a different qualification to go on to that. And so we mainly take students who go to University of Liverpool, but also we have students who go to Hope and John Moores and Edge Hill, and beyond that, other universities as well. But out of today, sort of thinking about what people have talked about, one point that's really struck me is sort of thinking how we might work with businesses in order to sort of help students through that process. That if an employer has said you'd need to have a degree in order to go on, how we can work together to sort of support that route through. But also those points raised in terms of competitiveness that Rachel had touched on. We're also finding students come to us who they found us through a Google search or something, but we're not necessarily the right place for them to be going for what they want to do. And sort of, it would be, what would be great would be sort of producing some sort of roadmap in terms of, if you need this, this might be where you go to. That Hugh Bird is the right place for some students. Hope is the right place for other students. Sort of getting it all to knit together seems very important.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think, you know, you're not going to get the chief executive of the Chamber of Commerce saying free markets are bad. But what I think is important is that we have an understanding of what is on offer for businesses, so that we can just make it as clear, almost a point of sale, for, you know, a really crude term. So, you know, for Hope, we you know, generally understand from the business school, I hope, that it's about, you know, finance, it's about management, and it's about marketing. They're the specialisms at the business school, along with now economics as well. And we understand the portfolio there. For John Moores, for example, we've just been promoting the internship scheme, which I've always been very careful to try not to say internment when it relates to a chamber placement. Sometimes I do, unfortunately. But again, we understand some of the specialism, we understand some of the opportunities, whether it's a low carbon innovation, all that sort of stuff. And similarly with the LCR graduate scheme that the University of Liverpool is leading on as well for City. So we understand that what we need to do is really smooth the passage for businesses to access those depending on need. And it's always difficult, you know, coming back to Janet's point about independent training providers, you know, as I say, I think there's about 80 in Liverpool. So we need to have a really good understanding, you know, ourselves and other support organisations, actually what's on the menu, how do you actually facilitate that and make sure that business need, and you know, we're going to bring Sean in a second. You know, if Sean needs a particular skill or a particular piece, bit of talent, where's he going to go for? Well, it's about understanding what that is and where to signpost to. And I know that there's, you know, the skills brokers in the city region. There's other initiatives such as that, but it does need that. I think that capacity being built to really understand, you know, what's on the menu from each of our education institutions. And I think that's one of the roles that chambers and others can play in that space. Sean.
Thank you very much for that, Paul. Right, just picking up a couple of things we've said. Mention SMEs and what SMEs are really looking for. When it comes to when you start the world of work, we don't want them to do full-time study. So even if they go away for 12 weeks, to be honest, it's counterproductive, because ideally you want them doing something. So most SMEs, and we mentioned the modular, but ideally the best form of training for SMEs is probably 1 day a week or half a day a week regularly, where they get regular top-up training. And I think that if that means that takes them 6, 7, 8 years to get through to a degree program, we've done that. It works. But sometimes, I think it was Lindsay Jane said this, you went back to uni, and I get that. But if you want to step off and go back, but typically businesses don't want.
Sorry, Sean. I just want to respond to that. I was working at the same time.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah. So I think it's about finding what's right for the individual. So I was more mature. I did have 10, 12 years work experience. I just needed that degree. So I carried on working in HE, did the degree, and then went on to do my master's at another university. So I think it's about not assuming that we know what people need. It's about giving them choice for them to decide what's right for them. And whether in your circumstance, a younger apprentice would be more suited to kind of doing that kind of role and then doing a part training role. But for others, they've already got the work experience and just need to ratify that with a qualification. So it's about having choice, isn't it? I think that's what the main thing is across the city for both SMEs and for students who are undertaking either degree apprenticeships or going on to do a full-time degree.
I'm going to put a strong SME point of view. What I'm saying is businesses don't want to send people full-time to college. That's the point I'm making. Business would rather send them part-time, but except we're all different. So except we're all different. The other thing which I think is also important is there always needs to be some sort of funding available of some description. That's good for businesses, it's good for society. Everybody benefits from that. So I think at the moment there is funding available to train people. Typically for businesses to train people, it does cost them money, and so having some funding. And the very third thing is that anybody who's doing a full-time course, this is a recurring theme amazingly, they must, when they finish the degree, particularly a degree program, they must have done some work. In the last 2 months, I have interviewed 2 people who are 22 or 23, and sadly, neither of them have had any real work experience. So they've done a degree in engineering, one of the local unis, and he hadn't done work experience. So I'm just throwing those out there as 3 sort of real things that I've got in my mind, and sorry to step anybody's toes.
Thanks, Sean. That's great. Jim?
Yeah, I agree with Sean. I'll give you an example. Some of the colleges in Maritime particularly take a lot of people on for 2 years of training and education, okay? And then they introduce them to a ship, and the attrition rate, the fallout rate of the people not going away to sea is very high because they haven't seen or touched or tasted what's good for them. And then all of a sudden they're crazy. The other key thing I wanted to say to you was that what the employers need to do is to sell the sizzle, not the sausage. Everyone knows what an education establishment does. What's the real benefit of me as a young person going into that educational system? Businesses also need to sell the sizzle, not the sausage. And what I mean by that is that what are the different pathways within their business that people can look at with a view to getting involved with? And if they do that, all of a sudden the young person can see that, and then they can be attracted to it. So you go through a series of pathways then with the businesses and the young people, and then eventually the young people would meet the businesses and they'd be attracted to the business that they want to get involved with, or the college or the education establishment that they want to be involved with. And it's simple route, but what we're doing is we're in silos. We're not working collaboratively together. And that's one of the, not only a small charity, but our charity tries to work with everybody. And that's one of the things we've got to stop doing, is working in silos. It's working together.
Aspiration and the practical preparation, isn't it? That's critical. I think the example there is great. I've never heard that metaphor as well, but I might try and use that one myself going forward. It's a really good point. You know, if you're going through all the theoretical learning and such, and then actually when it comes to going to sea, and all of a sudden actually that's not the right thing, then to some extent you could say that's 2 years that's been lost in terms of the opportunities for that career development. It's a really great point. Mike.
Thanks, Paul. I think this point about inclusion of work experience in the academic, educational, training experience, what you want to call it, is really important. And I think that one of the issues that we're tussling with at the moment, and I think several other people on this call have the same view, is that possibly because of the way that funding has changed, possibly because of a different worldview, people who come onto programs with us now, who could do a sandwich year as part of their studies, which we would always really encourage them to do because of the work experience in it, are now wanting to just not do that and fast track through to the end of the degree. And so whilst we see absolutely the value of that work embedded into the educational experience, selling that to the students who want to just sort of get out and get earning and get work into their real life is becoming more complex and more challenging as time goes on. But what that does is it forces us to adopt different, more innovative ways of including work-related and work-based learning into what we do anyway. So I think in that context, there's lots of ways to skin the cat, and I think we need to explore all of them, and that's why pulling these groups together is so important. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to leave to go to another meeting now, but I
just
wanted to say I found this an incredibly valuable discussion to have, and obviously for various other people on the call, we'll be picking it up in other places going forward. But thanks very much for inviting me, Paul. It's been a great pleasure to join you.
No, thanks, Mike, and look, thanks everyone. I'm going to draw things to a close because I know, and as I said at the start, we could probably talk till about 1 o'clock or so. But the guys here at MSP have already given us so much time this morning to have the event itself and the discussion. And frankly, I don't want to take the mickey by keeping them here any longer. So look, a quick plug, if I may. We will be doing some work in this space, particularly with Katie, but also with obviously Hope, Hugh Baird, and pretty much everyone else, in all honesty, around sort of business education connection. We won't be doing it all by ourselves, but we really want to work with everyone to make sure that we can actually move forward with some of this stuff as well. So look, thank you, really genuinely thank you very much for joining this morning. I hope you found it really useful, and as I say, we'll look to work with you all going forward to make sure that we've got the talent system that we deserve here in Liverpool.
Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, MSP.
Yeah, cheers.
Bye.
See you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye.